Let's discuss with Republican Congressman Mike McCaul of Texas. He is the ranking Republican on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and just got back from Poland, where he was visiting with refugees. Congressman, is there any sign that the sanctions that the U.S. and Europeans have implemented so far are having any effect on stopping Russia from attacking Ukraine? And do you think this new move by Biden, this U.S. ban on Russian energy imports, will do the trick?
Well, I think the sanctions are starting to have a crippling impact. The sanctions on the central bank have brought the ruble down to 1 penny. I think other sanctions are working. But the fact is, I think to answer your question, Mr. Putin is all in this war. He can't go backwards in time now, and it's a legacy issue for him. So I think he's put 100% now of what he has into Ukraine. And I don't see that turning back, but we want to make it as painful as possible. I agree with the president's decision to ban the import of Russian oil. It's 8% of what we import. Secretary Blinken asked me about this when we were in Poland, and I strongly encourage them to do so, if anything, for a moral, symbolic gesture that we cannot fund Putin's war machine. And the blood that's being spilled over there, we can't be a conspirator to that by funding it.
So let's talk about that, because the White House has signaled this move could open the door for potential new deals with other countries with despotic rulers, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and Iran, because the loss of Russian oil needs to be offset. If this is one way to keep gas prices lower for the American people, to get fuel from those other three countries, would you support it?
Well, this is what I would call the failed energy policy is a failed foreign policy. We shouldn't even be having this discussion. We shouldn't have been importing Russian energy to begin with. The Keystone Pipeline alone would provide more barrels per day than what we import from Russia. The closing down of ANWR, the closing down of licensing and permits in the United States, when we were becoming energy independent and we were leading the export, and now we have to be reliant on countries like our adversaries like Venezuela, and Iran, and he's denouncing OPEC not producing enough energy. Why aren't we doing that in the United States of America, where we can produce more clean energy and not have to be reliant on our foreign nation adversaries?
It is true that President Biden opposes ANWR and the Keystone Pipeline, but he pushed back today and said it's simply not true that his policies were suppressing domestic oil and natural gas production. Take a listen.
We're approaching a record levels of oil and gas production in the United States, and we're on track to set a record of oil production next year. In the United States, 90% of onshore oil production takes place on land that isn't owned by the federal government. And of the remaining 10% that occurs on federal land, the oil and gas industry has millions of acres leased. So let me be clear. They are not using them for production now. That's their decision. These are the facts. We should be honest about the facts.
Your response?
Well, I think the signal from the administration has stifled our production domestically. And I would answer by saying, if we're doing such a great job, why would we have to be reliant on, the Ayatollah or Maduro down in Venezuela, or OPEC nations in the Middle East? I think if we had a strong energy policy that we want to produce energy in the United States, that, while we want to convert to renewables and other types of energy, you can't just cancel fossil fuels out completely. And I think we're seeing now the problems with this administration's energy policy coming back to haunt us as we look towards our foreign nation adversaries to provide us with our energy supply.
Do you think the oil and gas industry in the United States should, well, they made record profits last year, right? 2021. I mean, should they maybe set their sights in terms of profits a little lower, knowing the pain that we're all going to go through? They don't have to have record profits every year.
Well, they've been under attack for quite some time. I know a lot of them, but I think, the pain would be relieved if we would allow them, to open up ANWR again, to do the Colonial Pipeline, so that we don't, have these high gas prices, and we don't have to import from our foreign nation adversaries. I think this is going to be, look, we're trying to be bipartisan as Americans in helping the people of Ukraine with lethal military aid, but I think this president's energy policy has created a really bad foreign policy, and you can't escape the fact that energy policy is national security.
So Republicans were blaming Biden for higher gas prices, as you have been, well before the war in Ukraine broke out. So when the prices go up again because of this ban on Russian oil, will Republicans ask voters to understand that at least some of that is because of standing up for democracy in Ukraine, or is Biden just going to be attacked no matter what?
Well, I think I will be honest that is in part why they are being increased, and it is a moral question of funding this slaughter that's happening right now in Ukraine. But the fact of the matter is it didn't have to happen. If we had an energy policy, in the previous administration, we were becoming very much energy independent, the leading exporter. Why did we allow the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to move forward into Europe? Why weren't we providing more LNG terminals to Europe? That's the pathway we were on until this president changed that. So then now Europe is 40% dependent on Russia. And that's why, to your earlier point, why they can't make the same commitment we're making here in the United States. It seems to me NATO allies, the United States and our other allies need to get off of this dependency of energy from not only Russia, but all the other foreign nation adversaries. And until we do so, we are very vulnerable.
Congressman Mike McCaul, ranking Republican House Foreign Affairs. Good to see you again, sir. Thank you so much.